All right, so you're looking to start a garden. Well, what do you need to do? Where do you start? I was out just getting our garden all set up this year, and I thought I would kind of walk through some of the steps if you're just getting into gardening, or it's been a long time since you've had a garden and you want to get started, whether you're in a country setting, a suburban setting, an apartment, wherever you are, and you'd like to just learn to start. And there's so many ways to garden, whether you have small or large spaces, whether it's container gardening, raised bed gardening, or traditional gardening, and I have a combination of those all here. So where do you start? So the first thing you need to figure out when you're looking to start a new garden is, where are you going to put it? You need to pay attention to your yard, and especially pay attention to where you get the most amount of sunlight. Generally, most of your crops that you're going to grow are going to do well in full sun. Some crops like leafy greens and other things are going to do okay in part shade also, but generally everything will do pretty good in full sun, with very few exceptions. So there are actually a few different apps that you can get for Android or iPhone that you can use to track the sun path during different times of the year. So even if you're planting your garden out in the winter time, you can use the app to set it to, let's say, July, and figure out exactly where the path of sun is going to be in your yard. You want to use that to figure out where you're going to get the best amount of sunlight. Once you have a place picked out in your yard and you're ready to get started, you need to figure out what you're going to grow. Now, generally, people, especially new gardeners, you want to go to the seed store and you look at all these great seeds on the rack or whatever at Home Depot or Ace Hardware or wherever it is that you go, and you're going to want to just pick out a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good. I want to try that. I want to try that. There's nothing wrong with trying new things, but I would encourage you to stay focused on things that you eat, things that you eat the most, and also things that you can preserve. So pay attention to what your family is using the most of. If you guys have salads every day, you want to grow a lot of salad greens. If you guys eat a lot of tomato or tomato products, you want to grow a lot of tomatoes. It's always great to try and experiment with new things, but you also just want to make sure the core of what you're growing is things that you're going to use. There's nothing worse than planting a garden, weeding it, taking care of it all summer long, and then not really wanting to eat half the stuff you grew when it comes August or September. So once you have some things picked out, it's time to look at seeds. Now, the best thing to do is buy your seeds earlier in the year. So even during the wintertime months, especially if you're in the northern climates, you can get better deals on seeds usually then, and I would recommend getting stuff online a little bit early if you can. I'll put a link in the description to where I get almost all of my seeds for our kitchen garden here, and that's MI Gardener. MI Gardener has a YouTube channel also here on YouTube, and he has a great seed store. They're very inexpensive seeds. They come with a great amount for small gardens in each packet, and it's very affordable. You can get a 10-cent discount on each packet. They're only 99 cents a piece already, and they're only 89 cents after if you use the link in the description. So check out the MI Gardener seed store. He's got just about everything that you could want there. So once you have your seeds, it's time to figure out which things you need to start inside and which things that you can direct sow in the ground. Now, this really varies on where you live. Here in the northern climates, we're going to want to start some things inside. Any of your hot weather crops, peppers, tomatoes, melons, any of the things that on the seed packet it says the harvest is longer than 90 days, you want to make sure that you get those things started inside. It'll tell you on the seed packet. If they're 120-day harvest, then you want to make sure that stuff is started inside. There's lots of different videos that I've done and others have done on how to start seeds inside. I would have you check the eye up in the corner there for some of those videos if you're interested. You want to make sure that you start those things early. In the northern climates, if you don't start your tomatoes and peppers early, you're probably not going to get a very good harvest. Now, if you're in the warmer climates down south, you don't have to worry too much about that. You can probably start a lot of your seeds right in the ground in March or April. So now it's time to prepare your garden space. There's so many different ways to do this. You need to make a decision. Are you going to do raised bed gardens, or are you going to do a traditional garden? Now, there's lots of benefits to both. Traditional gardening is easy to get started. You can till up a small spot of land with a shovel, a rake, whatever you want to do. If you have a motorized tiller, you can till up a patch of land and you can start gardening. You can amend the soil a little bit, maybe with some compost or some other things where you're planting, and you're ready to go. Raised bed gardening has a lot of great benefits, but you do have to purchase wood and build the raised beds or buy the raised beds, and then you have to fill them with soil. Even though they are a great way to go, if you're just getting started, don't be discouraged and pumping a bunch of money into your garden. It's easy to start with traditional gardening. If you've got the extra money and time and you want to get those raised beds set up, they're a little bit better long-term investment, and they're a little easier as far as weeding and caring for the garden throughout the year. Now we talk about soil amendments. What kind of soil do you need? Can you just throw stuff right in the ground? Do we need to do anything with the soil? I would definitely encourage you to do some type of amendment to your soil, whether you're going to do a soil mix in a raised bed or just traditional gardening with tilling in some manures and other organic matters. You don't need to get as scientific as having your soil tested and all that kind of stuff, but generally the more organic matter you have, the better. If you have a local farm and you can get a pickup truck load of compost or something like that and mix it in with your soil, that would be a great way to start. If you want a better soil mix, I did a whole video on the best soil mix that we have found here, and it includes sand, peat moss, and manure compost. If you want to just go small and be real basic, go to your Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever your home improvement store is, Ace Hardware, and pick up a bag of play sand, a bag of peat moss, and 2 bags of manure compost. Mix it together and you're going to have a great soil mix. So that's just a real easy kind of bagged way to go, and you can use that to amend soil or even fill a raised bed. When we talk about gardening and we talk about soil amendments, we can't talk about that without talking about compost. If you haven't already started a compost pile, start one right now. It's one of the easiest and cheapest ways to get yourself some really good soil every single year for your garden. Kitchen scraps, yard waste, tree clippings, leaves, whatever you have around, you can use that in a very simple composting method without any fancy bins or barrels or anything like that. Take a section of your corner of your yard somewhere and make a pile. That's all you need to do. Make a pile, turn it once or twice a year with a pitchfork or a shovel, and you've got yourself some good compost in 1 year's time. Nothing fancy about it, very easy to get started, and it doesn't require any special bins or plans or anything like that. If you've already started a compost pile, great. Get out your compost from last year, mix it in with your soil, whether it's locally right around each plant or tilling it into your whole traditional garden section, or whether mixing it in with a raised bed. That fresh compost is a great way to get nutrients to your plants. All right, so you're ready to get started planting. Now, there's lots of different ways to plant various kinds of vegetables. I'm not going to go through how to plant everything. Generally, the best thing to do is to look at the back of your seed packets. If you're buying from MI Gardener, there's very good instructions, a detailed description on what the seeds are going to grow for you, what they're used for, what the vegetables are used for, and how to plant them. Follow that and you'll be in good shape. One thing you want to pay attention to when you're planting is your sunlight. If you're going to grow a bunch of very tall things like corn or sunflowers or other tall vegetables or trellising things, you don't want to have that on the south side of your garden where it's going to be shading the rest of your crops. So on the north side of all your garden patches, where you're going to want to have all of your tallest stuff, the shortest things should go on the south side. That's going to make sure that as the sun is tracing across the sky, that you don't get anything shaded in your garden for long than just maybe half an hour or so. The shadows will move through your garden very quickly, and they'll be very short, and then you won't have trouble with things not getting sunlight. Caring for your garden is extremely important. Once you have things in the ground, you're not done. The biggest mistake that gardeners make, especially first-year gardeners, is letting weeds get away from you. You have to stay out there. As soon as you've planted, not more than 1 week should go by before you get back out into your garden and make sure you've picked all the little weeds that are going to start coming up. Especially if you're using a fresh yard or manure compost, you're going to have lots of little grass seeds and things like that that are going to be coming up. Get on that stuff right away and you won't have trouble with weeds. Your plants are going to grow better and you're going to feel a lot better about what you've done. Another thing you can do to control weeds is what I've done in our whole garden here, and use wood chips. Wood chips are a free resource in our area anyway. Almost every city that I've been to has some type of a collection point for all of their tree waste. They go and trim trees throughout the year. They have piles of this stuff. You can go take it for free. If your city doesn't have that, check your neighboring cities. You probably will find something somewhere. This wood chip mulch is an excellent way to keep weeds down between plants. We cover our entire gardens with it every year around all of our plants. It works very, very well. Water, water, water. Water is very important, especially for a young garden. Roots are very fragile, things are very small. Seeds need to be, while they're germinating, they have to stay wet. It's great to get yourself a fan sprinkler. Fan sprinklers I have found to be the absolute best way to water a garden, unless you're going to use some type of a permanent irrigation system with drip irrigation or something like that. Fan sprinklers are easy to move. They are very gentle on your garden. They cover a very large space. They're great for seedlings as well as adult plants. get yourself a good fan sprinkler. I'll put a link in the description to one on Amazon that's not cheap. It's a metal one. This one I got from Ace Hardware. It's all metal as well. Don't buy cheap fan sprinklers. They're junk. They will break. They will leak. The little gears won't work in them, and just buy a good sprinkler. If you don't have a good sprinkler, you're not going to water your garden enough, and things are not going to go well. You're not going to have time to hand water everything. Once your plants are established and they're nice and tall, they don't need to be watered quite as much. It's not going to hurt to water them every other day, but you probably could get away with going on a vacation for a few days as long as it's not too hot and dry and not watering your garden. But if you are going on vacation for more than a week or even a week, make sure that you have somebody stop by and turn your sprinkler on at least one of those days, especially if it's hot and dry. We've made the mistake before of not watering, come back to a dead garden. So you want to make sure that everything stays nice and moist and watered. Keep those weeds down, and you're going to end up having a great harvest when it comes time in July, August, and September. Harvesting time is the reward of all the work and all the time and all the waiting. It's a great time. Be prepared for what you're going to harvest. Make sure that you have canning supplies ready. Make sure that you have ways to preserve the things that you have. If you're going to do vacuum sealed and freezers, or you're going to do canning, or you're going to make things into jellies or jams or spaghetti sauces or whatever, plan ahead, weeks ahead of your harvest time. If you're up in the northern hemisphere like we are, you're not going to start getting tomatoes probably until August at the earliest, and August and September, even into October sometimes. Be prepared you're going to have a whole lot of stuff coming in at once, and you want to be ready to preserve that stuff. There's nothing worse than growing a big healthy garden all year long and then wasting so much food because you didn't have time to preserve it. Think of easy ways. Freezing and vacuum sealing is one of the best ways to go. I'll put a link in the description again to a great vacuum sealer on Amazon. They're an inexpensive investment, and it's very easy. You can dice things up, throw them in there, vacuum seal it, throw it in the freezer, and you're done. Now, of course, depending on what you grew, there's lots of ways to utilize your garden all throughout the year, especially by staggering your planting. So if you really want to make the most of your time and your harvest throughout the year, plant your quick growing things like your radishes and your leafy greens and things like that in staggered planting. So plant some at the beginning of the year, then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, plant another row or another section of like lettuces and things like that, and then do the same thing in 3 weeks later. That gives you a good staggered harvest for those kinds of things, because lettuces and all your other leafy greens, once they grow too mature, they're not good anymore. They generally will go to seed, they get bitter. You want the youngest leaves off the lettuces and things like that, even for kales and spinaches and a lot of those things. So staggering your planting is a great way to go to make the most of your harvest season for those types of plants. All right, so you've got all your vegetables, you've harvested your garden, but you're not quite done yet. Cover that ground. The best thing to do to prepare your garden for the next year is to cover that ground. Whether you use a cover crop like a winter weed or something else that's going to grow into November and even to December, it's good to keep roots in the ground and things growing. The other thing you can do is use your leaf compost and other things from around the house, leaf mulches or straw, wood chips. Cover that garden space. Keeps it wet, keeps it moist, keeps the worms and bacteria and other things in your garden. It doesn't dry out, it doesn't blow away. You prepare and hold the nutrients and moisture that you have in that garden space for the next year. So make sure that you cover the space, leave all your plants and all that stuff, that tomato stalks and sunflower stalks that have died off, leave that stuff all in the ground. You can take that out next year, whatever hasn't broken down. But all that stuff, the nutrients in those stalks, is going to go right back into the soil and get you ready for your next year. So for those of you out there looking to start a garden, hopefully you found some good information here. All you professional gardeners out there, have something to add, throw it down below in the comments. That way everybody can see it and learn from it as well. So hopefully you guys found this informational. Tap that thumbs up button on the video for me. Subscribe if you want to follow along. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.